Throughout the Middle Ages, bread was not a luxury, but a matter of survival. And yet history has quietly buried some of the most important breads humanity ever relied on. These forgotten medieval breads, made from barley, rye, oats, peas, mixed grains, tree bark, and even wild grasses, fed farmers, soldiers, and entire civilizations during war, famine, and brutal winters, long before modern ovens and refined flour existed. Maslin bread reflected dignity and poverty. Horse bread represented desperation at the edge of starvation. Trenchers served as edible plates to ensure nothing was wasted. Peas bread fueled exhausting labor. Oat and barley loaves sustained people where wheat could not grow. And black bread symbolized a harsh but honest life. Modern bakers rarely make these breads today, not because they lack value, but because they lack profit, softness, speed, and visual appeal in a world obsessed with convenience and perfection. These loaves demand time, patience, and acceptance of rough textures and bitter flavors, qualities modern society has largely abandoned. Yet, behind their hardness lies a powerful truth. These breads carried people through history's darkest centuries, and while we may have gained comfort, we may have lost resilience, humility, and respect for food. In forgetting these breads, we are not just losing recipes, we are forgetting how our ancestors survived when survival itself was the only goal. What makes these forgotten medieval breads even more important is not how they tasted, but what they represented in a world where hunger was constant and certainty did not exist. Every loaf was shaped by geography, climate, war, and class, wheat for the wealthy, dark grains for the poor, and whatever nature allowed for those on the edge of survival. Baking was slow, physical, and unforgiving. Dough was mixed by hand, ovens were unpredictable, and failure meant hunger, not inconvenience. These breads taught people discipline, endurance, and respect for resources, because nothing could be wasted and every ingredient mattered. In contrast, modern baking prioritizes speed, uniformity, and mass appeal, filtering out the very qualities that once kept societies alive. The refusal to revive these breads is not about impossibility, but discomfort. Discomfort with rough textures, imperfect shapes, long fermentation, and flavors that tell the truth about scarcity. Yet, as modern health crises, food waste, and fragile supply chains expose the weaknesses of our convenience-driven culture, these medieval loaves quietly regain relevance. They remind us that food is not meant only to please the eye or the algorithm, but to sustain the body, respect the land, and honor the struggle of those who came before us. To remember these breads is to remember resilience itself, an ancient wisdom baked into history, waiting to be rediscovered. As we dive deeper into the history of these forgotten medieval breads, we begin to realize that they were not merely food. They were living chronicles of human endurance, adaptation, and ingenuity. Each loaf carried within it the stories of families who lived through scarcity, of communities who survived plagues and sieges, and of entire societies that depended on every grain they could grow, forage, or trade. Consider the humble barley bread. Baked in cold northern lands where wheat could not survive, it was coarse, heavy, and often bitter, yet it provided essential sustenance to farmers and soldiers alike, offering strength where luxury was impossible. The peas bread, made from legumes, was a staple for laborers whose bodies demanded energy for long days in fields, forests, and workshops, a silent witness to the sweat and toil that built medieval economies. Trenchers, or edible bread plates, demonstrate the profound practicality of these times. Food, utility, and ethics intertwined so that nothing was wasted, and even the poorest could partake in meals without leaving scraps behind. Horse bread, mixed with tree bark, roots, and wild seeds, was often the last hope during famine, a bread that stretched survival by making something out of almost nothing. Maslin bread, a mix of wheat and rye, was more than just a loaf. It was a symbol of dignity and poverty, reminding us that even in hardship, communities found ways to maintain their humanity. And black bread, dense and dark, may have been overlooked by the wealthy, yet it embodied honesty. It was unpretentious, nourishing, and a testament to living within reality rather than illusion. Modern bakers often dismiss these breads as impractical, unmarketable, or too rough for contemporary tastes. But in doing so, we risk more than culinary loss. we risk losing touch with resilience, patience, and the profound relationship between humans and their sustenance. These breads were slow to make, demanding physical effort and time, sometimes requiring fermentation processes that could take days. They were not beautiful, they were functional, they were honest. And yet, in every bite, there was history, a connection to ancestors who understood that survival was not instant gratification, but careful planning, respect for the land, and acceptance of imperfection. Today, we live in a world obsessed with speed, aesthetics, and artificial perfection, where food is often stripped of character and memory, homogenized to appeal to the widest possible audience. But these medieval breads challenge us to pause, to reflect, and to reconnect with what sustenance truly means. They remind us that food is not just about flavor or convenience, it is about survival, community, resourcefulness, and respect for the natural world. They teach lessons modern society is in danger of forgetting, that hard work and patience yield reward, that scarcity fosters creativity, and that humility in the face of nature is a form of wisdom. Rediscovering these breads is not merely an act of culinary nostalgia, it is a reclamation of history, an awakening to the resilience embedded in the ordinary, often overlooked aspects of life. Every grain tells a story, every loaf carries lessons of endurance, and every forgotten recipe is a whisper from the past urging us to value sustenance over superficiality, effort over ease, and authenticity over appearance. As we move forward into an era of technological abundance and digital convenience, perhaps the greatest gift of remembering these medieval breads is perspective, a reminder that the comforts we enjoy today were built on the sweat, ingenuity, and survival instincts of countless generations before us, and that even the simplest, roughest, most overlooked loaf of bread can contain the wisdom and strength of centuries. By reviving interest in these forgotten loaves, by learning how they were made and why they mattered, we are doing more than preserving recipes, we are reconnecting with the human spirit, with endurance, with resourcefulness, and with the very essence of survival. And in that reconnection, we may find not just nourishment for the body, but nourishment for the soul, a grounding in history, and an appreciation for the depth and resilience of human life that modern convenience has so easily allowed us to forget. As we conclude this journey into the forgotten world of medieval breads, it becomes clear that these loaves were far more than mere food. They were the foundation of societies, the silent witnesses to the struggles, triumphs, and daily realities of people who lived centuries. Rise before us. Each bread, whether coarse or dense, bitter or plain, carried lessons in survival, patience, and resourcefulness that modern civilization has largely overlooked. In a time when food scarcity could determine life or death, every grain was precious, every bake was deliberate, and every meal was a manifestation of ingenuity and endurance. These breads were the invisible threads that connected peasants to kings, fields to kitchens, and life to the harsh realities of nature. Maslin bread reminded communities of dignity in simplicity. Horse bread exemplified the desperate creativity that hunger demands. Trenchers taught respect for resources and the value of sharing. Peas bread fueled the labor that built economies. Oat and barley loaves sustained those living in the harshest climates. And black bread, often ignored by the wealthy, reflected honesty and resilience. A bread that demanded nothing, but gave everything necessary to survive. Modern bakers, obsessed with speed, perfection, and marketability, have largely abandoned these breads, leaving them to fade in history. Yet in doing so, we lose more than recipes. We lose connection to our past, understanding of resourcefulness, and appreciation for the discipline that sustained generations. These medieval breads were not soft, not uniform, not visually perfect, but in their roughness lay character, strength, and wisdom. They remind us that survival requires patience, that scarcity fosters creativity, and that the relationship between humans and food is sacred, complex, and deeply rooted in necessity. In a world dominated by instant gratification, convenience, and artificial perfection, revisiting these breads offers a profound perspective that true nourishment is not only about taste or appearance, but about endurance, respect, and connection to the forces that shaped human history. To honor these breads is to honor the lives they sustained, the lessons they carry, and the wisdom they offer, A reminder that even the simplest loaf, humble and overlooked, can teach resilience, humility, and gratitude. The revival of these medieval breads is more than culinary archaeology. It is a reclaiming of memory, a recognition of human tenacity, and an invitation to reflect on how far we have come, and what we might have lost along the way. Every bite becomes a conversation with the past, every loaf a symbol of humanity's ability to adapt, endure, and flourish against all odds. As we look toward the future, these ancient breads challenge us to balance comfort with resilience, innovation with respect, and convenience with wisdom. They urge us not to forget that the most ordinary aspects of life, grains, flour, water, and fire, once held the power to shape civilizations, to sustain armies, to nurture communities, and to preserve hope even in the darkest times. In remembering and rediscovering these lost breads, we rediscover a part of ourselves, a reminder that history is baked into the simplest acts of survival, that endurance is a lesson still relevant today, and that the strength, patience, and ingenuity of our ancestors remain an invaluable legacy. Thus, the story of these medieval breads is ultimately the story of humanity itself, rough, imperfect, yet resilient, humble, yet profoundly capable, forgotten by time, yet still able to teach us how to live, endure, and appreciate the deep, sustaining value of life itself.